कथामृतम् तप्तजीवनम् कविभिरीडितम् कल्मषापहम् श्रवणमङ्गलम् श्रीमदाततम् भुवि गृह्णन्ति ये भूरिदा जना. So the Master's conversation with Prana Krishna is continuing. So Sri Ramakrishna's conversation, God's nature is that like of a child. I used to see God directly with these very eyes, just as I see you. Now I see divine visions in trance. After realizing God, a man becomes like a child. One acquires the nature of the object one meditates upon. The nature of God is like that of a child. As a child builds up his toy house and then breaks it down, so God acts while creating, preserving, and destroying the universe. Further, as the child is not under the control of any guna, so God is beyond the three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. That is why Paramahamsas keep 5 or 10 children with them, that they may assume their nature. So after realizing God, a man becomes like a child. So that's the idea which Sri Ramakrishna is relating to Prana Krishna. That was the idea that if there was a purpose behind the creation, then it would have spoken of God's bondage. If I am free, I can have no purpose. This purpose, that I have certain limitation, purpose speaks of going beyond those limitations, whether it is in the form of happiness or to attain some worldly goals, whatever it may be. Any goal, any purpose means that I have certain limitation and I am endeavoring to go beyond that limitation. So that speaks of God's limitation. But God is beyond all sorts of limitation. He has no purpose. Then what's the utility? Then why should He have created the universe? This creation, preservation, destruction of the universe which is going on incessantly. What's the purpose? So here Sri Ramakrishna is indicating that it is just like a child. You will find that a small child is always happy, is always in bliss, as if in a perpetual bliss. And the bliss finds expression as making and unmaking. If you give some clay soil, the synthetic clay to a child, or some clay soil to a child, it will go on making so many models, and then again it will break, again it will make something. So if really he had the intention of making some model, he wouldn't have broken it. What is speaking of this making and breaking, there is no purpose. It is just the expression of his happiness, the joyous, that in the Vaishnava scriptures, in the dualistic way of understanding God, they say the God has this Ladini Shakti, this Ananda Swarupata. His bliss finds expression as Allada, Ladini. So that Ladini Shakti finds expression as the creation. It is just the spontaneous expression of his joy, just the way a small child makes, unmakes so many things. So that way he is not bound by any sense of purpose. Whenever we have a sense of purpose, then the three gunas comes into existence. What's the three gunas? Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. What they speak of? Sattva speaks of stimuli. That my mind, when it is in dormant state, everything, all the ideas about the creation is in the dormant state in my mind. The external stimuli will be activating a particular type of information, and then that flashes up in my mind. And then if I have a purpose, I react to it. As per my liking, as per my disliking, I will be reacting to that stimuli. So that's the working of Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. The Tamas is activated by Sattva, and then Rajas comes into picture. So as we told, these three gunas are not something which can be separated into watertight compartment. They are constantly transforming. One guna is being transformed to the other. This tamas is getting converted into sattva, sattva to rajas. And why this is going on? Because there is a purpose. That when the stimuli is there, as I have certain sense of limitation, based on that stimuli, I will be either drawn towards it, or I will be repelled, or I will be afraid of it. These are the three things. Raga, Dvesha, Abhinivesha. And that speaks of response. So the moment we have a sense of purpose, the Sattva, Rajas, Tamas will come into play. But if it is just a spontaneous expression of joy, I am having no purpose, then such a person is beyond the three gunas. A small child is beyond the three gunas. We will find as if he is bound within the three gunas, but you will find it is just a mere appearance. As Sri Ramakrishna in some other context will mention, that suppose the father has bought a toy for the child, and it seems it is not going to share with anyone. It will be holding on to it. If you ask, he won't give. And most probably the toy is quite expensive. And then with a very something which is very cheap, which is not very costly, with such thing, maybe a simple toffee, the boy is not ready to give that toy or the new cloth which the father has brought him. He is not going to share. He is not going to give it to you. And you just give a toffee, he is ready to give it. So what it speaks of, it is all the gunas is just an appearance. As such, he is not bound. That's why you will find the small children, they so easily adapt to the new circumstances. That suppose the father has, because it's a transferable job, he has taken a transfer and has gone to a new place. For the elderly people, it has become so, it's a matter of time to really acclimatize with the new circumstances. And you will find the small child immediately shifts, immediately it makes new friends, forgets the old friends. So what it speaks of, that though it appears that it is very much attached to that old friends, but the moment you take him off from that environment, put him in a different environment, immediately you will find he is developing new relations there. Which speaks of that not a single interaction, dealings with the world, interaction with the world as such has created some deep samskara in his mind. No. So it appears, but he is actually beyond all the three gunas. And that's what is the nature of the Virata Shishu. The God who is the eternal child, the Virata Shishu, the cosmic child, from whom the creation, the preservation and the destruction is happening, which actually speaks of his Leela, his divine play, nothing else. And that's what Sri Ramakrishna is indicating with these words. After realizing God, a man becomes like a child. One acquires the nature of the object one meditates upon. So as God is like child, the one who is meditating upon him, he also becomes like a child. This is the faculty of awe. That we get awestruck. This is the faculty which sometimes we never try to nurture. But in spiritual life, this is the faculty which has to be nurtured. That if you have an ideal and you get drawn towards it, gradually you will find your nature is changing. You are so much awestruck with that personality, that larger than life. You will find a small child, after watching Spider-Man, will go and just buy the attire, the cloth, just like a Spider-Man, will try to imitate the one whom he adores. Why? He feels that he has a lot of limitations, but the one whom he adores is beyond all the limitations. As a human being, the self which is within us, it is always saying, you are infinite. It is echoing through our personality, and that's the thing which we always want to relate to. We aspire for that, aspire to go beyond all limitations. That's why in scriptures they say that we are a being who can never think ourselves within limits. Sa anantaya kalpate. We always think of limitlessness. We want to go beyond all limit. And that speaks of the awe faculty. In spiritual life, that's the thing. I feel I have a lot of limitations, lot of these weaknesses, limitations. But my ideal, the God, is beyond all that. And through that awe faculty, I try to relate to that. I want to get identified with that. And that speaks of spiritual evolution. And that's what Sri Ramakrishna is indicating here. That once you start developing devotion for God, gradually you try to inculcate, emulate the nature of the divine. That because through awe we try to relate to that. And that's what Sri Ramakrishna is saying. One acquires the nature of the object one meditates upon. The nature of God is like that of a child. As a child builds up his toy house and then breaks it down, so God acts while creating, preserving, and destroying the universe. Further, as the child is not under the control of any guna, so God is beyond the three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. And that is why Paramahamsas keep 5 or 10 children with them, that they may assume their nature. So it's very interesting. Sri Ramakrishna is not saying I, it's the Paramahamsas. You will find all the so-called future disciples, all the future renunciates. He had two types of disciples. One were the householders and others the monks. All these would-be monks, they were young boys of tender age. They were all in their teens. That's the time they came to Ramakrishna. Actually, that's what he's indicating. Why? That he finds, that he has went to that realization where he is always in the awareness of the divine, and he finds that the creation is nothing but the expression of his Leela, where God has no purpose. And that's the thing he finds in these young boys who are yet to be tempted by the worldliness. And that's why he is so much drawn towards them. He keeps them, he always tries to be with them. When others never understood that why Sri Ramakrishna is so much as if attached to these children. One day Hajra Mahashaya, he used to stay with Ramakrishna. Hajra told Ramakrishna that why are you so attached to the children? And this made Sri Ramakrishna really think that am I really developing attachment? So he went and asked the mother, prayed to the mother. And mother told that no, it's not ordinary attachment. You see me in them. That's why you are so much drawn to them. You see God in those children. And then Ramakrishna went and scolded Hajra that you tried to confuse me. He sees the divinity. That one day he told, even Naren told him that you are so much attached to me, your condition will be like Jadabharata. You know the story of Jadabharata, that the king who in his old age renounced his entire kingdom and went to the forest to live the life of a renunciate. And there he was doing a lot of austerity and meditation. And one day he saw that a deer gave birth to a young fawn, and after that it died. And who will take care of the small fawn? Now this renunciate Janaka, this renunciate king, he started taking care of this fawn. The fawn was growing, and it was this renunciate was, as it was taking care of it, it was so drawn towards it, they developed an attachment. A time came, one day it so happened the fawn, after all, it's a wild animal. When it grew a little, one day it never returned. And this king died thinking of that fawn, that where it has gone, who will take care of it? That way it was thinking, and he died, and in the next birth he was born as a deer. As he was, they say that what thought you have in the last moment, that's what you become. So he was born as a deer, small deer, as a deer. But because he was a renunciate, he was a renunciate and he had many good sanskaras. So though because of his attachment he was born as a deer, he somehow retained the memory of his previous birth. So now the idea, the thought came that I shouldn't be attached. So again, after the death, as a deer, he was born as a child. His name was Bharat. But as he took the resolution that I am not going to be attached anymore, so he appeared to be very, very dull and insipid and inert, because he was not interacting with anyone. From the very childhood, he was constantly in the thought of the divine dimension of his spiritual dimension of his existence. He never wanted to relate to the world. So that's why he was called Jara Bharata. So what's the idea? That what you think, that you become. So constantly thinking of the deer, he was born as a deer. So here we will find that Narendranath is just as if saying Ramakrishna, criticizing Ramakrishna by saying that you have so much attachment towards us, your condition also will be like Jada Bharata. And then again Sri Ramakrishna was perturbed. He went and asked mother that what Naren is saying. And again he got as if the response from the mother, that you see the divine in him. That's why you are drawn towards him. The moment you won't see divine in him, immediately you will be having a tremendous extreme repulsion for any person. As you see the divine, that's where you are drawn. So that's the idea. So here Sri Ramakrishna is speaking that Paramahamsa keeps all the children. It is actually he. Is all these young devotees of pure mind who are yet to get tainted by the worldliness. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say, that this type of children becomes an associate of a Paramahamsa. Not only that, it becomes easy for a Paramahamsa to build their life. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say, that if once the clay has been kept on fire and it has become brick, you can never change its shape anymore. You cannot mold it anymore. The clay can be molded as long as it is still humid and it is not dry and it has not been burnt. So he used to say these young boys are like all those clay which can be given a shape. So as they were beyond all the gunas, he was keeping them with him, so that constantly he was aware of the nature of the divinity, which is like them. We are beyond all the gunas. And not only that, he was building up their light almost unconsciously, even without their knowledge. Much later we will find when others used to ask the direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna that what's your opinion about him? That now everyone is saying Avatara, he is a divine incarnation. What do you think of him? And all of them invariably used to say, we never understood all those things, that whether he is an incarnation of God or other thing. We understood one thing, that he has the love, he was as if a love manifest. He was an incarnation of love. As Swami Vivekananda used to say, he is Love personified. That love was a thing which has drawn us to him. We were drawn to him by his love. Much later we felt that how, even without our knowledge, as we were drawn to him by his love and we were staying with him, our lives have started transforming. It was molded. So that's the idea which we find Sri Ramakrishna is indicating. These children, the Paramahansa keep with them. He always finds the God reflected in them. That's one thing. And as they are staying with him, they also gradually get affected by that life, and their life also start transforming. So that's the wonderful idea which we'll find in this word. Sri Ramakrishna is never indicating his name, but he is saying the Paramahansa, and that actually indicates himself. That what the Paramahansa does, that is why Paramahansas keep 5 or 10 children with them, that they may assume their nature. So that's a wonderful idea we find in these words of Sri Ramakrishna. Sitting on the floor in the room was a young man from Agarpara, about 21 years old. Whenever he came to the temple garden, he would take the master aside by a sign and whisper his thoughts to him. He was a newcomer. That day he was sitting on the floor near the master. Master to the young man. A man can change his nature by imitating another's character. He can get rid of a passion like lust by assuming the feminine mood. He gradually comes to act exactly like a woman. I have noticed that men who take female parts in the theatre speak like women or brush their teeth like women while bathing. Come again on a Tuesday or Saturday. Now, nowadays, these lines may create a lot of, result in a lot of discussion. One thing is there, that lust originates according to these two things: awareness of one's gender, or in the present day term, not only awareness, orientation of one's gender. So nowadays we speak of this transgender, that though he is in a male body, he feels like female body. Sri Ramakrishna is not indicating that here. That here that whatever you feel you are a man, but if you in Yoga Sutra they speaks of pratipaksha bhavana, contending thought. That it's not that your orientation, that though in a male body your orientation is like female. Sri Ramakrishna is not speaking of that. He is in a male body and his orientation is also of male. But to get rid of lust, now he has to do the contending thought. He has to go beyond the sense of gender. When you have sense that I am man, then only the lust arises. Even in the moment a woman feels he is a woman or man, whatever it may be, the lust arises. So now to contradict that, you have to think something apart from that. You have to go out of that, you're out of the box. So that is the thing which Sri Ramakrishna is indicating. That lust originates according to the awareness of one's gender or orientation of the gender. But self has no gender. If you're identified with the self, that is beyond the sense of he or she. You'll find in our scriptures, whenever they mention of the self, they use the word tat. It's a neuter gender, tat, that. Because it is beyond gender. In the gospel we find in some other context, Sri Ramakrishna is indicating that a person was worshipping the Divine Mother. And he has just put a sacred thread across the shoulder of Divine Mother. Now generally the sacred thread only the men wear. Now seeing the sacred thread has been put on the mother, someone asked, how come you have put the sacred thread on mother? And that person replied, well, most probably you have understood the mother. I myself don't know whether the mother is Purusha or Prakriti, whether it is a male principle or female principle. So what it speaks of, the divine is beyond the gender. So if we are attuned to the divine, we go beyond the sense of the gender. That if I am the self, then the self is neither he nor she. And in that case, if I can go beyond the idea that I am he or she, from that the lust originates. You can easily get rid of lust. So as self has no gender, one who identifies always with the self rises above the notion of gender and thereby can easily overcome lust. So that's the idea. So now when Sri Ramakrishna is speaking of what is he speaking of is neither the awareness or orientation, but it is a conscious self-suggestion that contents one's awareness or orientation of the gender. So that way you're constantly contending, and that helps to get rid of the idea of the gender, and then from that you will find that it is helping one to get rid of lust. Even in life of Sri Ramakrishna, whatever he is speaking is from his own experience, of his own sadhana. If you read the life of Sri Ramakrishna, you will find that for a certain period of time, he did sadhana as Sakhi of the God, as a handmaid of the divine, as a female companion of the divine. He used to adore himself with the sari, and he is to do it so perfectly. Sometimes others will be confused that whether he is male or whether he is female. So many times it has happened. So from his own experience, he is actually speaking. So when you try to emulate that the gender of other person, which is not your gender, or which is not the orientation of your gender or the awareness of your gender, then it's like a pratipaksha bhava, it's like a contending thought which helps you to go beyond the sense of gender, and that way you can get rid of lust. And that's what Sri Ramakrishna is indicating. A man can. So why Sri Ramakrishna is indicating? Because this young man actually was speaking something confidential to Sri Ramakrishna, and most probably it was that the lust which was disturbing him, and that he confided to Ramakrishna. And as an advice, Sri Ramakrishna from his own life experience is saying this, that a man can change his nature by imitating another's character. He can get rid of a passion like lust by assuming the feminine mood. He gradually comes to act exactly like a woman. I've noticed that men who take female parts in the theatre speak like women or brush their teeth like women while bathing come again on Tuesday or Saturday. So Sri Ramakrishna will find he himself being the worshipper of the Divine Mother. For Divine Mother, the Tuesday and Saturday are the auspicious day. So he used to call them on Tuesday and Saturday as the idea that these are the special days of the Divine Mother. And on those days, if they are present, it is more auspicious. Sri Ramakrishna most probably felt that the auspiciousness of that place is more palpable on those special days. And that's why he used to call the devotees on those special days, these Tuesdays and Saturdays. Come again on Tuesday or Saturday. To Prana Krishna, Brahman and Shakti are inseparable. Unless you accept Shakti, you will find the whole universe unreal. I, you, house, buildings, and family. The world stands solid because the primordial energy stands behind it. If there is no supporting pole, no framework can be made. And without the framework, there can be no beautiful image of Durga. So sometimes these words, we feel we have understood, but actually what he's speaking is something wonderful. Here in these words we will find the distinction between Buddhism and Vedanta. The idea of Buddhism is the philosophy behind Buddhism is called subjective idealism. What's that idea? That there is no as such reality outside. Our mind is constantly projecting. The so-called whatever we see is a projection of the mind. Nothing is there. There's shunya. The mind projects, and that's how the universe comes into existence. That example which we give again and again, that the red flower, how it is red? The red is not outside there. The stimuli in the form of this light comes and strikes my eyes, and its function is over. It gets converted into some nerve current, and when it reaches the so-called color perception center, color is not perceived. Actually, that nervous impulse is being interpreted as the color. The moment that a nerve impulse of particular frequency goes and strikes the color perception center, the color is projected from there. It goes and envelops the flower to give you a sensation that it is red. Now in Vedanta, what they say, that this mind by itself cannot work. It is something inert. There is a consciousness behind it which activates the mind, and then the external stimuli is projected as this world. So in Vedanta, there is a consciousness which is activating the mind. In Buddhism, they say there is no consciousness. The mind itself is projecting. So now you will find that if Brahman is coming and activating the mind to project, then what happens? Whatever is projected is nothing but Brahman. And if the mind itself is just projecting, then what happens? Then it is just something which is not at all there. Nothing is there. It is just the working of the mind. The mind has created it, and it is just a mere hallucination. And to explain this idea of Buddhism, there is a very nice story. One of the cousin of Buddha, his name was Aniruddha. He, because of his some pious acts in his previous birth, was born in this life with a boon. What's the boon? That whatever he desires, that has to be fulfilled. That is called Satya Sankalpa. That whatever he desires, it has to be fulfilled. Now, one day this Aniruddha was playing with the royal children. They were all playing. And now, suddenly, out of their childish, all those childish games they were playing, suddenly they planned, why not do something like gambling? What's the gamble? They will have some game. If someone loses, then they have to just give something to the. So they have to first that they will first promise that what's the thing if they are going to lose, they have to give, and that way we will find that Aniruddha was constantly losing. And now, as a children, they have nothing to gamble with. So what they were gambling with? In the morning, when they came out from the palace, the mothers of these children, they packed the food, and there was a servant with them. They were carrying the servants were carrying the food, so that when the children are hungry, the servants could feed them. So now they have nothing apart from this food packets. The lunch box they had. So now when Aniruddha started losing, now what to gamble with? He was gambling with all the breads, the stack of breads which he had. And after some time, all the breads were over. He was losing. And then he was still in the mood of continuing with the game. So what he did? He asked the servant, he ordered, go to my mother and ask her to give me more breads. So the servant went and asked the mother of Aniruddha to give more breads, and she thought most probably my child is very hungry. She again packed the tiffin box with breads. Again he was losing, again everything was over, again he asked the servant to go and get the breads. And this time the mother understood. It couldn't be that he's so hungry, he cannot eat so much. He must be doing some mischief. And this time the mother told, well, enough of it. That she gave back the empty lunch box to the servant and told, go and give this to my child and say, no bread, no bread. And so what to do? The servant was returning with the empty lunch box. Now, the divine beings, so they were concerned because Aniruddha has been born with that boon, that whatever he desires, material thing he desires, that has to be fulfilled. Now how come he wants this bread and the empty lunchbox will be delivered to me? It is not possible. So somehow these devas conspired. This story is very interesting. And conspired in such a way that without the servant's knowledge, they managed to fill that lunch box with all the celestial breads. It was full. Now this time when the servant went and gave the lunchbox to Aniruddha, just saying no bread. That's what his mother told. Just give the lunchbox and say no bread. Now Aniruddha opened the box and found these celestial breads. And it was so tasty. After this time he was really hungry. He ate them all, and now he again returned the tiffin box to the servant saying, ask my mother to give more no breads. So this is Shunyavada, no breads. So what's the story? All the devas are actually our indriyas. What is coming in is the empty lunch box. And these indriyas are filling it with the celestial breads. In Sanskrit, div means that which illumines. So the indriyas are also devata because they illuminate. So they are illuminating as such. When the mind, this empty, whatever this empty framework is coming from outside in the form of stimulus is nothing, shunya, it is an empty lunchbox. And you are filling it, our indriyas are filling it with the celestial bread. And that's how I see the world of name and form and colors. That's the wonderful story in Buddhism. That speaks of the subjective idealism. And now, what's the difference with Vedanta? Very less, very small, subtle. They say no, there's a self which activates the mind. Without the self is inert. It by itself cannot simply project the universe. Just like the hard disk of a computer, unless the bias voltage passes through it, it is inert. So this mind is also jada. The consciousness has to activate it, and then only it can generate this universe. So now the entire idea changes. So this universe I am seeing is nothing but the projection of the divine. So keeping these two ideas, now let us read those words. You will find that in the simple words, Sri Ramakrishna is actually speaking something which speaks of the difference between subjective idealism and the real idea of this Vedanta, which speaks of this superimposition. That you will find the constant fight in philosophy goes on. So some say the world is real, the idea of this divinity is something which is the imaginary, and some other groups are there, they will say no. It is the conscious principle alone is real, the world is imaginary. So this main difference is called, one is called idealism, other is called realism. So Vedanta is neither idealism nor realism. What they say, when you see the world, you cannot see the consciousness. Those two cannot be together. And when you see the consciousness, this world vanishes for you. When you see a snake in a rope, when you are seeing the snake, you don't see the rope. And when someone brings a torch and focuses it and you see the rope, the snake has vanished. So both cannot be seen together. So this is neither idealism nor realism. So this is the idea which we find in these words. That the entire, if you don't take the ultimate reality, the Shakti, either Brahman or Shakti, because they are inseparable, as the ultimate reality, then the whole universe becomes imaginary, it becomes unreal. I, you, house, buildings and family. So now let us read that words of Sri Ramakrishna. Brahman and Shakti are inseparable. Unless you accept Shakti, you will find the whole universe unreal. I, you, house, buildings and family. The world stands solid because the primordial energy stands behind it. Just like the white light passing through the prism breaks into the spectrum. So the prism is the mind. Behind the mind, the primordial energy or the Brahman is standing, means it is in association with that. And then only this projection is possible. So if there is no supporting pole, no framework can be met. And without the framework, there cannot be no beautiful image of Durga. So this world is the image of Durga. So that's the idea. That the mind is the framework through which the consciousness principle is appearing as the image of the divine. As Swami Vivekananda's that wonderful allegory when he went to the Niagara Falls, the same thing idea. The Niagara Falls, even there is always the rainbow visible there in the Niagara Falls. And seeing that, Swami told that Niagara Falls, the false is the world, because it is constantly changing. The sun is the absolute reality, the Brahman, and this rainbow is the idea of God, the image of Durga, the idea of God. As long as Brahman is there, this and the Niagara Falls is there, the rainbow is there. If the Niagara Falls dries out, rainbow won't be there. If the creation is not there, God is not there. But the absolute reality is always there. That is there. Even if the Niagara Falls dries out, the sun is there. But the rain, that's why he's told, the Swami used to say, God is the highest reading of the absolute. So as long as we are in the body-mind senses, through the body-mind senses, when we try to think of the absolute, we just conceptualize the idea of God. Because being in the body-mind complex, we can never realize the absolute reality. It has to be realized as the rainbow. So it is the highest reading of the absolute. And that's what's the idea which Sri Ramakrishna is speaking of. That there can be no beautiful image of Durga. The idea of God cannot be there with subjective idealism. You have to take Brahman behind it. And then only through this framework, you can make this idea, you can conceptualize the idea of divinity. So that's, you'll find this very high philosophy that since the simple words of Sri Ramakrishna sometimes we miss. It's a wonderful thing he's saying. This Brahman and Shakti are inseparable. Unless you accept Shakti, you will find the whole universe unreal. I, you, house, buildings and family. The world stands solid because the primordial energy stands behind it. If there is no supporting pole, no framework can be made, and without the framework, there can be no image of Durga. Without giving up worldliness, a man cannot awaken his spiritual consciousness, nor can he realize God. He cannot but be a hypocrite as long he has even a trace of worldly desire. God cannot be realized without guilelessness. So this is the idea which Sri Ramakrishna is pinpointing. As Swamiji used to say, that what that hypocrisy is, that we waste so much of energy to show others that I am spiritual. If I would have used the same amount of energy to transform myself, most probably I would have transformed. So here Sri Ramakrishna is saying that he is an hypocrite, that who has even a trace of this worldly desire. You have to, that then God cannot be realized without guilelessness. What does guilelessness means? In the words of Ramakrishna, when your mind conforms your speech, that you are saying that I am beyond all desires. I want to go beyond all desires. That's what your speech is saying. But in your mind, you still harbor the thought of this enjoying the world. So that's what speaks of. That speaks of hypocrisy. And what is guilelessness? That when your speech conforms your mind, mon mukh ek kara. So when this happens, what it means? Not like the present day autobiographies. When nowadays we get a lot of that. You will find many great person while writing the autobiography, they just as if to speak out the truth, speaks all the deficiencies they have, weaknesses they have. It's not wrong, it's okay. That way he is speaking the truth. But when Sri Ramakrishna says mon mukh ek kara, it doesn't mean in that way. It means just the opposite. That as I have to have a spiritual ideal, yes, I have to go beyond all desires, that I profess, and my mind should gradually, through the process of purification, reach a state where it's no more speaking something contrary to my speech. So I have to gradually transform my mind as per what I profess, not just the opposite, that what Actually, mine is I just bring my words down there and be autobiographical. It's not indicating that. It's not something wrong, but that doesn't speak of spiritual evolution. For spiritual evolution, I should have an ideal, and gradually I have to watch my mind that it becomes so pure that it conforms what I profess. So without that, there cannot be any spiritual evolution. So without giving up worldliness, a man cannot awaken his spiritual consciousness, nor can he realize God. He cannot but be a hypocrite as long as he has even a trace of worldly desire. God cannot be realized without guilelessness. And then Sri Ramakrishna is singing some song. Cherish love within your heart, abandon cunning and deceit, through service, worship, selflessness, does Rama's blessed vision come. The same idea is just what is just now was speaking of, that he is expressing through this song. Even those engaged in worldly activities, such as office work or business, should hold to the truth. Truthfulness alone is the spiritual discipline in Kali Yuga. It's very powerful words. That Kali Yuge Shottoi Ekmatra Tapasya is the austerity in Kali Yuga. Why? In this age, practicing truthfulness is very difficult. Everywhere we find, you go to office, you go to anywhere, you'll find somehow or other people speak of some sorts of compromising with the truth. And now to practice truthfulness there in such situation becomes more difficult, challenging. But if someone can practice, that can lead to the spiritual, that can accelerate the spiritual journey. You know how? That we will find a very interesting thing. The one who holds to the truth just the way the mother holds a child. But the mother loves the child so much that if something is going to happen to the child, the mother is even ready to sacrifice her life for the child. Are we holding to the truth that way? That as if it's my child, I have to nurture it. Then what happens? After all, our spiritual evolution speaks of annihilation of ego, annihilation of the idea of the limited individuality. Now, for the sake of truth, if you are even ready to face any challenges, you are ready to sacrifice even your life, then your ego gets obliterated very quickly. This limited body-mind complex, that also is nothing to me. I hold to the truth, so it's very difficult. It's not easy. But one who can do that, he can just accelerate his spiritual journey to a great extent. It enables him to get rid of the ego very quickly and go directly to the spiritual realization. That's why you will find in our scriptures, they indicate this righteous war, dharma yuddha, that to die in a righteous war, whether you win or not, if you have taken the side of righteousness, and most probably you die in that war, they say you attain spiritual illumination. Because here was the same idea, that for the sake of truth, I am ready to sacrifice my idea of this limited ego, this punny ego. I want to even sacrifice my life, for I know that after all, the spiritual dimension in me nothing can touch. That's how the Bhagavad Gita, the very second chapter, starts with that idea. So immediately takes you to that realization. So that's why Swami Sri Ramakrishna is saying that truthfulness is a tapasya, austerity in this yuga. It's not easy to practice. But like any other tapasya, if you can really make it a part and parcel of your life, know it for certain, just the way tapasya is meant for spiritual unfoldment. So here also this is a tapas which can enable in a spiritual unfoldment. So never resort to untruthfulness. In this yuga, if you can resort to truthfulness, that this opposing factor is so strong that it can really make your struggle very intense and lead you to the spiritual illumination very quickly. So if I cannot do it, let me accept this. Yes, I am not yet strong to practice truthfulness to that extent. But let me not say this is impossible. This is two things. Let me be quite humble enough to say that yes, I am not yet that strong to practice to that extent, but it is possible. And that's what Sri Ramakrishna is indicating. That truthfulness, those who are engaged in worldly activities such as office work or business, should hold to the truth. Truthfulness alone is the spiritual discipline in Kali Yuga. Prana Krishna. Yes, sir. It is said in the Mahanirvana Tantra, O goddess, this religion enjoins it upon one to be truthful, self-controlled, devoted to the welfare of others, unagitated and compassionate. Master, yes, but these ideas must be assimilated. So you have read the scriptures and you are just speaking of it. But spiritual enlightenment speaks of being and becoming. Religion is being and becoming. It's not just like academic knowledge. It's being and becoming. What you, as Sri Ramakrishna in some other context used to say, that the so-called learned people, in worldly sense, they are like the vultures, used to say, like vultures. They soar very high, they fly very high in the sky, but all their attention is focused to some charnel pit in the ground where you get the rotten flesh. That's its food. It feeds on that. Though it is flying very high up in the sky, its entire attention is on the charnel pit. So he says that with all our knowledge, sometimes we find that it in no way reflects the real personality of that person. His intentions are very, very selfish, extremely. It speaks of extreme attachment, though he's speaking of those high ideal truths. So that's why Sri Ramakrishna is saying it's not mere words, that it's written in the Mahavina Tantra that to be truthful, self-controlled, devoted to the welfare of others, unagitated and compassionate. So these are the things which, O goddess, this religion enjoins it upon one. But these words, what will it do it unless you really make it a part and parcel of your life? So it has to be something which has to be assimilated. These ideas must be assimilated. So as Sri Ramakrishna in some other context used to say that someone has heard of milk, someone has seen milk, and someone has drunk it and became nourished by it. So religion is not just seeing or hearing. It is to get nourished by assimilating it, by living that life, by constantly trying to make those ideas a part and parcel of my life, to walk the talk. That's what the real religion is. And that's what Sri Ramakrishna is indicating. These ideas must be assimilated. But just mere quoting the scriptures won't help. Sri Ramakrishna was sitting on the small couch. He was in an ecstatic mood and looked at Rakhal. Suddenly he was filled with a tender feeling of parental love towards his young disciple and spiritual child. Presently he went into samadhi. The devotee sat speechless, looking at the master with wondering eyes. Regaining partial consciousness, the master said, "Why is my spiritual feeling kindled at the sight of Rakhal? The more you advance towards God, the less you will see of his glories and grandeur. The aspirant at first has a vision of the goddess with 10 arms. There is a great display of power in that image. The next vision is that of the deity with 2 arms. There are no longer 10 arms holding various weapons and missiles. Then the aspirant has a vision of Gopala, in which there is no trace of power. It is the form of a tender child. Beyond that, there are other visions also. The aspirant then sees only light." So what it speaks of? That in the so-called name of devotion to the God, most of us, the majority in the world, is actually the worshippers of the world. If I find the deity is adorned with gold, there's a lot of display of wealth, you'll find a huge people, this throng of people going there, thinking that here the power of the divine must have manifested. Why it happens? Actually, we love the gold. It is the gold which is drawing us. It is this pomp and glory. Those are the things I like, and that draws me. But still, it is okay. Why still is okay? At least, though this pomp and glory is the thing which is attracting me, but this pomp and glory is associated with the divine. So how now, if I am drawn towards it, I will find gradually it helps me to sublimate my worldly desires and to make my devotion more and more pure. And at last, I will find that all my so-called worldly attachments have been sublimated to pure devotion. To give an example, that I most probably am fond of mangoes. And when the first mango comes, what I do? I purchase, and then being a devotee, I go and offer it to the divine. And then what I do? I take it as a sacred food. So that's something which has been offered. If I would have bought the mangoes and have just eaten it directly, it would have just expressed my greed. The same greed now gets sublimated to devotion when I offer it to the divine and then have it. So that's why in our scriptures, for all the ritualistic worship, what is the philosophy behind it? They say, Atmavat Deva Sevanam. That what you like, with that you worship the divine. How it will help? By gradually sublimating. That the more you associate the divine with these worldly things, your attachment for the worldly things will gradually start falling off, and your devotion for the God will go on increasing. At last, all these so-called pomp and glory, this glamour, this show-off, that will fall off. And at last, it will result in pure devotion. I will end today's class with that example that we have stated in so many other contexts. What's that? A brahmachari, for the first time when he joined the Ramakrishna order, he was asked to do ritualistic worship. And he found that every day, along with various ingredients, some perfume is also used. And now the perfume is to distract him. Because when he was at home, this perfume was used only for some social events, like some wedding ceremony. There all used to use it. And now, as it is associated with all those social events, the thought of those past social activities, that is to distract him. And he never understood that why in the worship they use all those things. But as he continued with the worship, after some months, just the opposite thing happened. What happened? Now when he went to the market to just purchase something for his everyday worship, he was passing by a perfume shop. It was a noisy place, extremely noisy, and a lot of crowd. There you can never have contemplation in such an atmosphere. But when he was passing by the perfume shop, when the smell of perfume came, he suddenly felt that as if he is sitting in the shrine, worshipping. The association has changed. The same scent, the same perfume which used to distract him, now it has got associated for the few months, as he is every day worshipping the divine with that. This perfume has now got associated with the divine. So now, just the opposite. When even in a place, in a marketplace, noisy place, crowded place, the smell now, as it is associated with the divine, even in that atmosphere, suddenly he finds his mind is as if drawn within. It is in just in association with the divine. It is in the mode of contemplation, though outwardly he is in a noisy, crowded place. So now you will understand how this also called all this external pomp and show of power, wealth, though one may be drawn towards it, it's not bad. Okay, if you are drawn by that is very good, but know it for certain, as devotion increases, all those things falls aside. At last, you get more and more attached to the pure sattvic aspect of the divine, and that's being expressed by these words. Once we read this paragraph so that we can relate to what we have was discussing, and then we will conclude today's discussion. Why is my spiritual feeling kindled at the sight of Rakhal? The more you advance toward God, the less you will see of His glories and grandeur. The aspirant at first has a vision of the goddess with 10 arms. There's a great display of power in that image. The next vision is that of the deity with 2 arms. There are no longer 10 arms holding various weapons and missiles. Then the aspirant has a vision of Gopala, in which there is no trace of power. It is the form of a tender child. Beyond that, there are other visions also. The aspirant then sees only light. So all the attributes has fallen off. He is now in communion with the pure divine awareness. So that's what happens at last. So how nicely Sri Ramakrishna is describing that spiritual evolution through sublimation. So with this, we stop our discussion today. We'll continue with the remaining portion of the conversation of Master with Prana Krishna in the next class. Thank you all. Namaskars.